Hey, welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy half hour. I'm here. I have my bubbly water today. So I'm thrilled and I've got my stolen chimes. Yes, I collected these from the Museum of Broadcast Communication and I brought them home to keep them safe during the pandemic. And we are still closed at the Museum of Broadcast Communication. Although, as soon as we find out when we're going to open, you will be the first to know. But when we open, we're very excited that you still will be able to come see Stay Tuned, which is the exhibit that we have there about rock and television, rock on TV, and how both of these industries totally affected one another, elevated one another, and really kind of changed the landscape. And so one of the things that is really interesting about the exhibit is that it really highlights some of the things that we here in Chicago call our very own. And one of those is Soul Train. And Soul Train, which started here in WCIU TV, is something that not only do I care about, does the museum care about, does the city care about, but interestingly enough, younger people care about it too. And we have somebody here who actually has done a documentary, an amazing young woman. Her name is Avery Kelly. She's joining us this week. Hello, Avery. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for asking. I'm doing well, and I'm doing even better now that you're here, because it's just really exciting to talk to you. You are here because one of the projects that you've done, tell everybody how old you are.
So I'm 12 years old.
You're 12 years old. You're 12 years old. And we're not going to talk about how the rest of the world has to feel bad because they have not accomplished what you've accomplished at 12, but or at 35 or 45 or 55. But you have done a documentary on Soul Train that has won some awards and won some placement. And so we're going to show a little bit of it during the show, and we're going to talk a little bit of it. But I really wanted to get a sense of you and why did you start this? Why did you think of Soul Train? We think of Soul Train as ancient history, right? But it's not, right? So tell us a little bit about why you decided to do this.
So at my school, every year, the sixth grade class has to participate in the Chicago Metro History Fair, which is a history fair competition that's not revolved, but involved with National History Day, which is also a history fair competition. So the theme is breaking barriers, and our teacher made us do something that specifically was in Chicago and had Chicago roots. So I decided to do Soul Train because of the fact my family watched it. My parents watched it, my grandparents watched it, some of my cousins watched it. So I already was like, I have some information there. I also dance and do film. I'm a film nerd. And I'm like, those are involve two of my favorite things. So I'm like, that is something so amazing that I could do my project on that not only has Chicago roots, didn't happen all that long ago, and it's still really fun. So I ended up doing my documentary on that because I decided to do a documentary out of the 5 different types of projects you could create, which was a website, an exhibit, a paper, a documentary, or a website. I feel like I've repeated one of those, but anyways, you get the gist.
That's okay.
And I decided documentary, and it passed my school fair and went to the city, and then it went to state, and then it went to the national level, and a whole bunch of things came from that I couldn't even imagine would happen. So it was really exciting, and that's kind of how the whole documentary started.
So let's talk a little bit in a minute about all the things that came as a result of this documentary and where you are with it. But let's show a little bit of it, because I love the way you frame this. I love the way you set it up. I was playing this earlier today, and my husband came in and he said, "Wow, this is really good." I said, "She is 12." And he said, "This is really good if she were 35." So please, Fritz, I think, Fritz Goldman, thank you so much for engineering today. And he's going to play a little bit of it for us.
60s were a very different time from now. America was segregated in many ways, especially in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. So you get right in there with the context, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I started automatically. I really wanted to get all of the information in there because there's so many important things about Soul Train that I needed to get in exactly 10 minutes or less. So I kind of just went right into it.
Right. And what's interesting is that you're talking about how it was a very different time, right? And yet, in some ways, it's not that different from where we are right now, right? Right? We're in the resurgence of a civil rights movement, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. There is a difference, right? It's a different era. We've made progress since the 60s, right? But not enough, right? And so the beginning, not enough at all, right? Yeah. So the beginning of your documentary is showing people in the streets, right?
Yes, it is showing people in the streets kind of protesting because of the fact when Soul Train started, it was like right in the epicenter of the civil rights era, trying to get the rights that African Americans deserve in America. So I really wanted to show that because it showed a little insight about how Chicago and America in general was not in the best place when it came to race and racial equality. So I wanted to show kind of a little bit about what Don Cornelius had to deal with trying to achieve his dream at the same time as a Black man in America. And I feel like Soul Train was a big part of the civil rights movement because it broke barriers for African Americans in entertainment, in television, in art, in artistry, and singing. And I felt like it was very major. So I really wanted to be able to show that in those few seconds of kind of showing the civil rights movement going on in America.
And you do a wonderful job of doing that. You really do a wonderful job of kind of showing where people were, how voices were being uplifted, and then you will move into things, and that is my dog barking, and I can't silence myself, but I apologize for that. But it's what's interesting in the museum is that we have a point where one of the videos that's in the museum talks really about how, as music was coming along, it was these variety shows. It was like American Bandstand that were really elevating artists, people who didn't know it. But it was only about 1% of African American groups who were getting on these shows. If you got on the show, if you got on the Ed Sullivan Show, if you got on Hollywood Palace, if you got on American Bandstand, you went right to the top. But 1%, until Soul Train came along, and it featured Black artists. It featured music of all sorts on there, whether it was mainstream, whether it was funk, whether it was stuff that you really might not have heard of, right? And it was Don Cornelius's dream to do that, right?
Yes, I realized a lot when doing the project that shows like American Bandstand and the Ed Sullivan Show, they were actually in major competition with Soul Train because of the fact Soul Train was like American Bandstand but was gaining more popularity because of the fact it showed Black people in a positive light, something that American Bandstand and lots of other shows weren't doing. So when realizing kind of the difference between American Bandstand and Soul Train, you really learned a lot about discrimination, and it gave Black people a platform on Soul Train, which is something that American Bandstand never did for African Americans, besides that 1%, which really started after the growth of Soul Train. So at the end of the day, I kind of feel like Soul Train gave a lot more opportunities because also the further that it went, they also had white artists on there, but it was a majority African American show, and it was an opportunity for Black people to be seen, and was an exposure to the culture and kind of the way that Black people did things. So I feel like it was very important. And American Bandstand, in comparison, wasn't all of that showed the culture, and not even to mention the dancing. The dancing on Soul Train it was amazing. The dancing, the hair, the outfits, the songs, it was all just amazing and brought something that was very empowering and positive to the TV screen.
I barely remember watching American Bandstand. I remember watching Soul Train all the time. I just loved it, especially the dance lines. But I found it very interesting too when you started talking about Don Cornelius. Now, there was a bunch of things there that I did not know. I did not know that he was a policeman for 2 years. Did not know that at all. And then he started working at WCIU, right? WVON or
He worked at WVON as a radio personnel and kind of hosted some shows. And it was very interesting because I didn't know that he was a police officer either. And I had no idea that he was in radio. So I feel like the link to going from radio to television was something that was a very important component in the start of Soul Train. Because without working at WVON and getting those connections through radio, he wouldn't have been able to have the ability to create Soul Train and start a pilot episode at the studios and have it on WCIU and then go to a huge platform of ABC and have it air nationwide every Saturday. So I feel like the transitioning was very important.
So he started in radio and then he moved to television and then he was able to push this dream forward. And I want to, Fritz, I think we were going to air a little bit more of the documentary about that point where he was really thinking, okay, I want to get this on TV and how am I going to do it, right?
Yes.
He then decided to go to his friend who worked at Sears. Together, they later approached Channel 26 to have Sears as a sponsor while the show stayed in Chicago. Channel 26 allowed the collaboration, helping Soul Train stay on that year. Don was very satisfied with the publicity Soul Train had received in Chicago. He wanted to show his vision of positivity with Black youth across the nation and expand the show nationally. So, he created a pilot episode of Soul Train to showcase to networks in Los Angeles. Originally, the idea was declined because Soul Train was considered to be too similar to other dance shows already on huge networks. Don knew he had to create something to set Soul Train apart from other shows. Hence, the Soul Train Scramble Board and the Soul Train Dance Line were born.
Wow. Tell us, I remember and know the dance lines and the Scramble Board, but tell everybody else who might not remember and know.
Okay, so the Soul Train Dance Line it was 2 columns of people. And down the middle, you saw dancers that were doing their own combinations or something very creative of dance steps. And those were like the dances everybody was trying to learn at the time. If you saw a pair of people going down and then afterwards you saw them doing a dance move you had never seen before, people tried to recreate those dances because they were cool. They inspired kids and adults and even people that were super old. They inspired them to learn the dances. So the Soul Train Dance Line was something very important, and people still to this day do it. You cannot go, I don't know, one wedding where people do not do the Soul Train Dance Line at least once. So it's something.
And I don't want to go to a wedding where they don't.
There's a wedding where they do that. Do I want to be there? I mean, it's something that generational.
You're right. It brings people together, but you were talking earlier about how it wasn't just the dance, it was also the fashion, it was the hair, it was, and in that dance line, you really saw those 2 people coming down and you could watch them, you could watch their moves and you could see how they, everybody was styled in a different way, right?
Yeah, everyone had their own individual style. When I was doing my research for the project and I was watching videos of Soul Train dance lines when the show was still on the air in like the 70s and early 80s, I was looking and you could see and pick out each person with their own individual style and own individual hair and own individual dancing. So it was really interesting and it was really amazing to see because I feel like there are not a lot of shows, and especially at that time, where you would see that. So I feel like that's one of the things that differed the show from lots of other shows like American Bandstand. So I feel like it was pretty amazing, and it really showed, like I said, positivity. And when it comes down to the scramble board, it was where a bunch of letters were randomly placed on a board, and Don Cornelius would pick people from the audience, well, not from the audience, but people who were dancers, to come up and try to unscramble the board and unscramble the letters into the name of a historical Black figure or a Black person who was doing amazing things, whether or not they were an entrepreneur or a singer or a dancer. And they would have to unscramble the letters. And it really taught people about Black culture and about what Black people were doing during that day and age, and also before that. So I felt like those were two things that not only set the show apart, but gave pure examples of the culture and allowed people nationwide to learn about Black figures and about dance and about the individual style and hairstyles and fashion. So it was really, really amazing and so inspiring.
So take us a little bit further in the story, because once he got the scramble board and the dance lines, then he went back out to California again to try to make this show national. And what happened?
They decided to pick up the show after that. It got put on ABC, and and you could see it nationwide every Saturday morning, and people loved it. And the one thing that he did need, though, was sponsorships, because of the fact making sure that it could stay on the air on a nationwide platform, he would need more than just Sears to help him with that. So he got Afro Sheen as a sponsor, and the show just went so far after that and after that creation. So it was really amazing.
And so that's another kind of milestone, because what you were, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is that again, this was a hair care product for African American, really just right for the Black community, and it didn't really have a mainstream place on air most of the time, right? It just you would only see it you'd only see commercials like that, maybe a very specific segue time. So it was a real breakthrough onto mainstream during mainstream TV, and also during primetime type hours where people were really watching it. So it's another way to say, okay, I want the rest of the world to try to understand this television, giving us another bit of culture. I think it's hard for people to understand that at a certain point, it was as though if you were Black, you were invisible on television.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I feel like Afro Sheen, what they did with Soul Train was not only great marketing, it allowed people to support their community, which was meaning Black people decided to go out and buy hair products that was created by African Americans. So they were buying into their own community, which I feel is something that was really needed at the time, because they needed to support one another. We still need to support one another. So I feel like that was something amazing that they got to do. And the marketing with it was just amazing. And what they did was they promoted Afro Sheen on a Black show, a primarily Black show that lots of Black people were able to watch every single Saturday. And they had the hair products. And not only did they show them, but the people that were dancing down the line, all of the dancers, Don Cornelius, for their hair, they used Afro Sheen products to be able to show the audience about what Afro Sheen does to hair. It helps natural hair grow, and it helps them a lot. And I just feel like the way that they were able to do that, and African Americans were able to buy into the community and support it at the same time, it was an amazing thing. And it just makes me like really proud in Black entrepreneurs, especially the people who created Afro Sheen Johnson & Johnson products.
So this is one of many things that you've done. I mean, we're concentrating on this because it is tied to the show in the museum right now, that of course none of you can see, but it's Rock and Roll TV. But this is just a small part of what you are doing, right? You kind of are you're your own little media maven, right? Tell us a little bit about the show that you have. Tell us a little bit about the stuff that you're doing, and because you're a fascinating young woman.
Okay, thank you so much. So over the entire self-isolating, social distancing from everybody, I really wanted to be able to at least let kids see positivity every week because of the fact there's so much going on in the world, and sometimes you just need a mental break. So I created a virtual talk show called Tweendom that every single Friday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, I go live on YouTube and Facebook and have a talk show that shows kids and what they're doing, and kids, tweens, and teens who are doing amazing things right now and in the past. And it really just shows what kids are doing now and also amazing things that they're doing. So I started this mainly because of the fact, like I said, the pandemic and everything that's going on, but it was an idea I actually had for a while. So it's called Tweendom Talk Show, and our YouTube channel is Tweendom Talk Show, and our Facebook is Inspired Melanin LLC, and you can watch the live stream on there. And I do a lot of projects. I started last year a production company called Inspired Melanin LLC, and I do screenwriting and I direct. And I have a project called Back Row, which I've been writing for a while, and I have been doing my best to try to get picked up by a major network because I want to be one of the youngest screenwriters ever on a major series on a major platform. So I'm just really
tell us what it's about, in case by any chance anybody's listening who could help. What do you want to get? What's the show?
The show is called Back Row, and Back Row is about a group of tweens and teens who are sitting in the back row of their classroom, and I've created a very special bond because of it. And it's really showing like the coming of age, kind of the trials and tribulations of having to deal with 7th grade and going through it together. And it's really positive, but it's also realistic, showing the realistic things that people unfortunately will have to go through sometimes, no matter how young you are. So I feel like this show is so near and dear to my heart, and I've really wanted to work with so many people on it. Like, I really want to work with people like Spike Lee, Ava DuVernay, and I'm really trying to manifest the dream and just do my best, shoot for the stars, and try to get it to happen because I'm really inspired. And I just really hope that I'll be able to work with those people and be able to get my dream and get my shows out there.
Well, I do believe that you are inspiring too, and you really teach people that, you know, there's no excuse for not going after what you want. And I think that the people that you mentioned, David DuVernay and Spike Lee, I think they would be very lucky to work with somebody like you who really has a vision about storytelling and how important it is, no matter what age, right?
Yeah, no matter what age. I just really hope that I can inspire people that no matter how old you are, I mean, like, I'm 12 years old and I'm trying to get a series out there because that's my dream and that's what I really want to happen, and I want to inspire people because of that. So I just want people to know that no matter what age you are, whether or not you're 2 or you're 200, that you should go after what you want, because at the end of the day, you only live once and you just really want to make the best of it. So go after what you really want.
So we were also talking earlier today about different platforms. You're a TikTok woman, right? You're on TikTok, yeah. Right? Yeah.
I love TikTok, Instagram, and I'm on it 24/7.
So we as a museum have just launched greatdebates.org. It's a website. It's talking about politics. And one of the things that we talked with earlier today with you is that maybe we might be able to do there it is. You can all see it. It's really great in that what we love is that it really looks at the presidential debates and how each time the broadcast industry did something new and recreated itself and evolved, it really disrupted the campaign trail, making it very different for, you know, politicians to get on camera, politicians to get on social media, politicians to get onto a different social media platform than they're used to, right? Oh my God, we just had that last week, and now we have this, and so we talked a little bit about the possibility that you might be able to help us do some things this summer that might keep kids interested in news and in politics. Because as we were talking about news, you said it's just not something that you think of consuming in the regular way, in the way I would do it, right? right? Where do you get
Yes.
your news?
I get majority of my news actually from social media outlets, not like things people are just creating out of the top of their head saying, oh, I heard about this, not like anything that's a rumor. But since the evolution of media, I feel like social media platforms such as Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of those have been able to really show all of the things that are going on in the world, but when you want to see it and how long you want to see it for. Like, for instance, on the news, like we had talked about earlier, you can be watching the news for 3 hours and maybe see a 5-minute segment about what you want to see. But when you go on social media, you can just search up whatever you want, and then you will see tens and thousands of articles that have to do with that topic and read it in a good 30-40 minutes and get more information than you would by watching seven possible news platforms. So I feel like social media has evolved with that, and it just presents it in an entirely new light. So I feel like that's very important, and it's changed a lot. So that's the reason why I get lots of my news from social media. And also because I don't like watching lots of depressing stuff. And the news, unfortunately, all at one time shows a whole bunch of sad things that have happened on in the world. So I'd rather just watch what I want to know about rather than watching 20 different depressing things and then what I want to know about.
Sometimes I feel like it is important. And this is the older me saying there are some of those things, those depressing things and those horrific things that we just have to know about. We have to know about, and we have to get good information about to be able to take action on it. Like the protests that you were talking about in the 60s. One of the things that was interesting is there was a exhibit I mentioned to you earlier in the museum, and the museum which closed. It was a museum about news in DC, the news industry. It really talked about how the civil rights movement, the workers, the students who were organizing it, felt that they had been doing so much work for civil rights, but then when television came along and it was able to televise the what was going on, how the hoses were being turned on people, what the viciousness was, that it was a game changer. And we look like we're in the area of a game changer now as well, in a civil rights movement where we're looking at seeing videos on social media that are illuminating things for us, right?
Yes, I completely agree. I feel like television really changed once everything started being televised, and people were able to see firsthand what had happened and all of the things that are happening now. I feel like thanks to technology and being able to televise and show people this is what's actually happening, even though you don't see it, our people see it. Even though you don't see it, that's what's going on in real life. So I feel like it's very important, and I'm very grateful that things can be televised for people to be able to see and get the information. And the things that are released on social media, I feel like it gives an even wider spectrum to people that just watch the news. Then afterwards, it reaches teenagers, and it'll reach young adults. And the news will reach people in their 50s and 60s and people in their 30s and lots of different families. So the world will know what's going on. Yeah. So I feel like being televised is so very important. And because sometimes I realize more and more each day that some things are put on social media outlets earlier than the news stations see it.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's very shocking to me how social media so much can show something that's very, very important go on before the news stations even can. And it's very, very interesting to me. So it takes a lot to deal with, and it influences a new generation.
So I have to say, it's fascinating and wonderful to talk with you. I think I've even gone over a little bit of our time, but that's okay. I think we're going to talk again, and I'm excited about that. And I cannot tell you, Avery, how wonderful it is to be able to share your work and share your passion just for a brief time. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so much. It was so amazing to talk to you, and this was an amazing opportunity. Thank you for the support.
So, and anybody who's looking for it, I think that we will have your documentary up on our website right after this program. So go on to the website, look at the whole documentary. It's really wonderful. You'll enjoy it. And Avery, thank you so much. I know we'll be hearing so much more from you in the future.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Okay, you have a good, everybody else. We'll see you back here Friday on Instagram for the Real Drama Show with Aileen Bishop and Olivia Jackson. And I can't remember what they're talking about, but I know it's going to be fun. It is always great to have your Friday evening with Olivia and Aileen. And we'll see you back here for another happy half hour next week. Thank you so much.